Good evening. We'll now call the business session of November 3rd, 2020 to order at 6 p.m. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meeting Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the Governor and Attorney General, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body provides alternate methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to submit their comments to the City Secretary's office by 11 a.m. today. The City Secretary will read into the records the comments submitted on items on the agenda at the appropriate time. Individuals who registered to speak on a public hearing item will be allowed to speak remotely for 3 minutes. We have received registrations for comments on public hearings this evening. When the registered speaker is acknowledged, he or she must limit his or her comments to 3 minutes. For any person addressing the council through the use of a translator, the speaking time will be doubled to accommodate the translation service. Now please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item of business is to consider and approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2020 meeting. Are there any changes? Those will stand approved as read. We will now consider ordinance 20-768.
Yeah, you have. Read the caption. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening we are reading an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, amending Chapter 26 Utilities of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, by adding a new Article 10 entitled Municipal Drainage Utility System, providing for definitions, making required findings, establishing a municipal drainage utility system, adopting subchapter C of Chapter 552 of the Texas Local Government Code, declaring the drainage of the city to be a public utility, establishing the service area, establishing a drainage utility fee, providing for categories of drainage utility rates, providing for billing of drainage utility fee and penalties and remedies for non-payment, creating a drainage utility fund, providing for administration of this Article 10, providing for an appeal and hearing process, providing for an exemption, providing for no waiver of immunity, providing that the city may issue drainage revenue bonds, providing for the discontinuation of drainage system, prohibiting access to stormwater drainage infrastructure unless designated as open to the public, providing for hours of operation if open to the public, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing for penalties, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This is the second reading.
Okay, thank you. I believe that was Amy, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Amy. Esmeralda, we have a comment submitted on this item.
Actually, we did, Michael Michalik, but he requested and called with clarification that he'd like his comments to be read for the public hearing, 769.
Okay, thank you. So there are no other comments on this item, correct?
No, sir, there's not.
Is there a motion?
I'll move approval on second reading.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think Jim, hold on. I think Holmes is trying to say something, but he's muted. All right about that? Jim, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was thinking I'll make my comments in the second one. But I guess well, let me just go make them now. I mean, this is kind of for both. Supportive of this, of the stormwater utility fee in general, and just some of the clarification that I was asking for a couple weeks ago, I think came through kind of very loud and clear on, and really, I want to read page 42 again, because this kind of addresses most of what my initial concerns were in the context of fine tuning the fees as we go, and what the latitudes there are, and taking care of outliers and sensitive issues, and making this potentially not harmful to small business, because I don't want to do that. But just where it says, again, on page 42, I invite everybody to look at it. Staff recommends adoption of these fees to allow for development testing of the billing system, the development of a calculator, which I think is very important, development of the budget for utility, including projected revenues and expenditures, as well as reductions in general fund expenses. That to me is very important. The city council will have the opportunity to review the budget and fees for the stormwater utility system when considering the 2022 budget and fee schedule. Again, that's out there in over a year. And finally, prior to presentation of the fiscal year 21-22 budget and fee schedule, staff will propose to the council a list of credits available to non-residential stormwater customers. So I think up and down the line, staff did a good job in addressing some of the concerns we expressed a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to be voting in favor of this.
Councilmember Kennard, could I get a clarification real quickly on your motion? Was your
we're moving approval of the ordinance on second reading, right?
Yes, sir, but I wanted to make sure, see if you were including the changes that we referred to in the work session.
I move approval on second reading, including the changes that we discussed in the work session.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
A second again on that approval.
Okay.
And I'll weigh in one more time. So yeah, those changes we had really is another kind of a belts and suspenders on review, and giving us time to kind of look at how this looks in a budget. And again, I appreciate staff and council's work on this.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Please poll the board.
Holmes,
Aye.
Green,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Zito,
Yes.
Barfield,
yes,
Weaver.
Yes, that motion carries. We'll now move to public hearings. We have 3 public hearings tonight. First is 2020-769.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing to consider a resolution adopting the schedule of drainage charges for the municipal drainage utility system in the city of Waco, providing that the effective date to begin charging the fees as shown in the schedule of drainage charges for the municipal drainage utility system and issuance of bills for said fees will be October 1st, 2021, and providing that the fiscal year 2020-2021 operating budget fee schedule for the drainage utility fund is hereby amended to include the schedule of charges for the municipal drainage utility system.
And I just want to remind council that we talked about a change to that resolution as well. So if the council desires that, that should be part of somebody's motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any questions for staff? We'll open a public hearing for comments. Esmeralda, do we have some registered speakers on this item?
Yes, I do. And the first speaker is Michael McKellach. He says, I urge you to reconsider items of the proposed utility fee. I am against the utility fee, especially against the locations in central Waco to be exempted. All current homes should be exempted. It is unfair to exempt homeowners in the central loop and charge those of us who live on the outer edge within the city of limits of Waco, such as the West Waco neighborhoods. My home was built in 1984. There is no more current impact to the drainage basin than at that time it was constructed. I think other homeowners would agree this is the same for theirs. Although I'm opposed to the fee entirely, if you do see fit to pass this, it should be charged equally to all residents and businesses, or preferably only to new construction going forward. The next comment was from Jean Gradishar. Her comment is, comment on city council proposed stormwater fee. You are taxing homeowners twice. Yes, tax new construction developers for these improvements, but current homeowners pay for the upkeep with their property taxes. As much as property taxes have increased in the last 5 years, there should be plenty of money to cover repairs and additions to current infrastructure. If you would cut back on the tax breaks that you are giving to those developers, there should be plenty of money to cover those updates and repairs. Quit making residential property owners cover the cost of things that we are already paying taxes to maintain. Mayor and council, those are all the comments on this item.
Okay, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I will move approval of this, including the changes discussed in the work session.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Oh, well, here, the only thing I just want to be clear on this one. The first public comment on this particular item, there is no bifurcation of charges. I mean, it is being charged to the city as a whole, both interior and exterior. I think the speaker on that one had it confused with the impact fees, but just wanted to be clear that on this one, it is a universal charge as a utility fee that is charged to all residents and businesses within the community.
I appreciate you clarifying that. John. Any further discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Green,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Sevita,
Yes.
Fairfield,
yes,
Seaver.
Yes, that motion carries, and thank you, Amy, and your team for work on the project as well as the legal work that's been done on this. We'll move to public hearing 2020-77.
Honorable Mayor and Council, this is a public hearing on an ordinance amending the project and financing plan for reinvestment zone number 1 for tax increment financing, TIF Zone 1, to consider approving, number 1, an amendment to the agreement with SRH Hospitality Waco Downtown Investments LLC to provide an extension of the project completion date, reallocate TIF funds among portions of the project, and additional contractual changes associated with the construction of a Marriott AC Hotel at 301 and 325 South 6th Street. And number 2, an amendment to the agreement with Czech Brewing Company LLC to provide an extension of the project completion date for Pivovar Restaurant, Brewery, and Hotel project located at 320 to 324 South 8th Street. And authorizing the city manager to execute any documents necessary to complete these transactions, providing an effective date, providing a savings clause, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you on first reading. On October 8, 2020, the TIF board voted 5-0 to recommend amending the agreement with SRH Hospitality Waco Downtown Investments LLC, ordinance 2019-738 for public improvements associated with the construction of a Marriott AC Hotel at 301 South 6th Street. The amended agreement does not include a request for additional funds, but does contain the following. Number 1, project completion date and the contract extended 1 year from September 30th, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. Number 2, an appraisal dispute value lowered from $43,292,462 to $40 million. Number 3, the inclusion of pandemic virus in the force majeure clause. Number 4, shift previously approved funds of $250,000 from public structured parking to the burial of overhead utility lines. And on October 8, 2020, the TIF board voted 5-0 to recommend an extension of the contract with Czech Brewing Company LLC, ordinance number 2019-080B, to allow for additional time for the completion of the building renovation located at 320 through 324 South 8th Street, extending the completion date from October 27, 2020 to February 28, 2021. As required by law, a notice of this public hearing was published in the Waco Tribune Herald on October 23, 2020.
All right, thank you, Ken. Any questions from staff? We'll open a public hearing for comments. Esmeralda, do we have anybody registered for this item?
No, sir, we don't. And just as a reminder, the mayor, Councilmember Kennard, Ewing, and Holmes have filed affidavits of substantial interest on this item.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
make a motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Ewing,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Sevita,
Yes,
Fairfield,
yes,
Seaver.
Yes, that motion carries. Public hearing 2020-771.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing held pursuant to 24 CFR 570.611, Conflict of Interest, to disclose that a City of Waco employee has applied for federal loans administered by the city and to receive public comments in connection therewith. Soleil Resendez, City of Waco employee, has applied for a rehabilitation loan funded by Community Development Block Grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development and a lead abatement loan funded through the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. Staff recommends approval of a loan amount up to $22,122.90 for rehabilitation and $19,066.88 for lead abatement for the single-family home. Ms. Resendez is employed by the City of Waco at the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame and Museum. Ms. Resendez does not work in a decision-making capacity related to applicants for these programs. Ms. Resendez's income does not exceed 80% of the median income of the City of Waco, McClendon County by family size. The home that will be rehabilitated is located at 1601 North 21st Street, Waco, Texas, 76708. These loans are treated the same as other loans of similar nature and are forgiven at a rate of 1/10 per year for rehabilitation and 1/5 per year for lead abatement.
Okay, thank you, Ranisha. Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Esmeralda, anyone registered on this one?
No, sir, they did not.
Okay, we will close the public hearing and there is no action required on this item. We have received a comment card for agenda item resolution 2020-782. So we will remove that from the consent agenda and vote on it separately. Esmeralda, would you please read the comments on item 782?
Yes, sir. These comments were submitted by Teresa Porter. You mentioned Peterbilt, but you didn't mention Motive, Lion, Mack, Volvo, BYD, or Freightliner. There are grants available from the TCEQ and the EPA to offset the cost of purchasing low-maintenance, zero-emission, medium, and heavy-duty battery electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. Speaking of infrastructure, if you hurry, there's still time to qualify for the alternative fuel infrastructure tax credit before it expires on December 31st. In spite of the higher initial purchase price, you will save hundreds of thousands of dollars in maintenance cost over the life of the vehicle. The average cost of an oil change for a diesel engine is $200 to $300, depending on the quality of oil and filters used. Every 30 to 60 days, depending on the hours the engine is in operation, plus the cost of used oil disposal. Electric vehicles don't have crank cases. EVs have regenerative braking, which not only extends the vehicle range a little, but also saves a lot of wear on the braking system, which saves you money on maintenance. Other maintenance costs associated with diesel engines include head gaskets, valve jobs, fuel filters, and exhaust systems. Electric vehicles don't have these. The maintenance list is so small, you can write it on a Post-it note. You will also save the cost of approximately 6,000 gallons of fuel per truck per year. These types of trucks weigh 66,000 pounds with a full tank of gas, depending on the body configuration. Electric truck weighs about the same. For example, the Lion 8 refuse truck weighs 60,000 pounds. The weight of the truck does not decrease as the fuel is consumed. The Lion 8 can service approximately 1,000 cans before needing to be recharged. I'm sure your workers take lunch breaks. They can simply plug into the CCS fast charger on their lunch break. Of course, with existing infrastructure, they'd have to go to Bellmead just like the rest of us. 8 years ago, the Texas Triangle PEV Readiness Plan encouraged cities to prepare for the transition to battery electric vehicles. The future has arrived and you are still not ready. Infrastructure is not that expensive and it's a good investment. For the same amount of money you're spending on winter holiday decorations, you could be purchased and installed at least 8 public level 2 charging stations and 1 CCS or CHA demo fast charging station. Holiday decorations don't generate income, charging stations do. Invest now so that you're ready for 2022 and 2023 when dozens of BEVs are scheduled to arrive. I've included 2 attachments and 2 links for your enjoyment. I hope that you take the time to watch the video mentioned in the BYD link so you can see with your eyes and ears to hear with your own ears. And council members, I forwarded that communication to you earlier as well as the attachments.
Okay, thank you, Esmeralda. Is there a motion on resolution 2020-782?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Aye.
Yes.
Mar,
Yes.
Edom,
Yes.
Hatfield,
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries. The consent agenda tonight consists of resolutions 2020-772 through 2020-791, with the exception of 2020-782. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Ewing,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Sabito,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Burr,
Yes, that motion carries. We have three ordinances tonight. The first is ordinance 2020-792 on first reading.
An ordinance amending section 2-51 in Division 4 Sustainable Resource Practices Advisory Board and Article 2 Boards, Commissions, Committees in Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas to number 1, revise the mission, purposes, and membership of the Sustainable Resources Practices Advisory Board, and 2, add requirement that the board conduct its business in accordance with the city council's policies governing City of Waco boards and commissions. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, and finding and determining the meeting in which this ordinance is passed, open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We have several comment cards on this. Esmeralda, would you please read those into the record?
Yes, sir. The first comment is from Skip Londos. I'd like to see that the SRPAB become far more serious about climate change than it has been. I recommend local sustainable practice expert, Dr. Alan Northcutt, been considered for a spot on the advisory board. The next comment is from Matt Helton. The stated goal of the SRPAB is to promote sustainability, which is vague and has no specific target. The board must work to help the city reach the net zero CO2 emission by 2050, as the IPCC requires. In fact, the revisions does not even mention the term climate change or greenhouse gas emissions. If the city does not recognize a problem, it will never be able to solve it. Next, rather than join the Clean Cities Coalition, we call for the city to join the Sierra Club Ready for 100, calling for 100% renewable energy in all sectors of 2050. Finally, the revision calls for a board member who is a representative from a civic environmental organization. This should clearly be a member of the Waco Friends of the Climate, which is the only such organization in Waco working on this specific issue. Our organization has led the city on decarbonization and should have a seat at the board. I recommend that Mr. Alan Northcutt be considered for this position. Next comment is from Alan Northcutt. His comments are, on the background section, please recall that this SRBAB began some consideration of decarbonization following the presentation by Waco Friends of the Climate on impacts of anthropogenic climate change at a council session early in 2018. At the same time, we presented a petition signed by over 1,000 Waco area residents calling for the city to go 100% renewable in all sectors by 2050. The stated revision mission of the SRPAB in the agenda packet is to promote sustainability in the area of energy usage, material and waste management, air quality, as well as water quality and conservation. In 2020, the term sustainability is vague and sets no goals. In fact, what does it really mean? We call on the council to follow the science just as it did with the pandemic. As we have repeatedly emphasized, we are in a climate crisis, and the gold standard science for the IPCC states we must cut GHG emissions globally by 45% by 2030 and be at the net zero emissions by 2050. In addition to our petition, the U.S. Conference of Mayors calls for its members, including Waco, to go 100% renewable. But instead, the revision does not mention climate change, global warming, or GHG emissions. If the city cannot speak specifically of the crisis, how can it expect to help avert it? By ignoring the crisis will not prevent Waco's future if climate change is not mitigated. More severe heat waves, worsening drought, crop failures, more flooding, biodiversity loss, and acceptance of climate refugees. Next, the proposed Clean Cities Coalition is out of date and again fails to speak to the climate crisis and the targets that the climate science requires us to set. Further, the coalition still promotes natural gas, which is a dirty fossil fuel we must leave in the past. We recommend instead the city join the Sierra Club Ready for 100 of over 160 cities plus school districts and other pledge to go 100% renewable. On board meeting frequency, the SRPAB has done nothing for over 1 year. Obviously, in dealing with the climate emergency, the board must meet monthly. Even the Youth City Council meets every month. On board membership, the revision calls for one representative from a civic environment organization. We call on the council to appoint a member of the Waco Friends of the Climate for the position, as it is the only Waco organization specifically dedicated to action on climate crisis. And even if the revision does not state it, the gorilla in the room is a climate crisis, and although there are some knowledgeable people on the other board seats mentioned, no one has the extensive experience on what the city must do to decarbonize found in this organization. And I would be honored to thus contribute to the board. See my list of definite steps the city must take to decarbonize in the attached file. And Mayor and Council, I forwarded that to you earlier today. Next comment is from David Architoff. The goal of the SRPAB is to promote sustainability, which should be that the board must work to help the city reach net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 as the IPCC requires. To help achieve this goal, I suggest the city to join the Sierra Club Ready for 100 that calls for 100% renewable energy in all sectors by 2050. The revision also calls for a board member who is a representative from civic environmental organizations. I would like to nominate Alan Northcutt to be on the advisory board. Our future is at stake for the health of our citizens and for economic viability of the city. That's it. Next comment is from Jack Bowers. The stated goal of the SRPAB is to promote sustainability, which is vague and has no specific target. The board must work to help the city reach net zero CO2 emissions by 2050, as the IPCC requires. In fact, the revision does not even mention the terms climate change or greenhouse gas emissions. If the city does not recognize the problem, it will never be able to solve it. Next, rather than join the Clean Cities Coalition, we call for the city to join the Sierra Club Ready for 100, calling for 100% renewable energy in all sectors by 2050. Finally, the revision calls for a board member who is a representative from the civic environmental organization. This should clearly be a member of the Waco Friends of the Climate, which is the only such organization in Waco working on the specific issue. Our organization has led the city on decarbonization and should have a seat on this board. Next speaker or comment is from Harrison Ward. The SRPAB cannot promote sustainability without a strong focus on dealing with climate change on a local level, specifically by helping the city reach a goal of net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. A board member should be added who is a representative from civic environmental organization. I believe the person should be Alan Northcutt, who not only has the requisite knowledge of the issue, but also possesses the dedication and the energy to be effective on the board. Last comment is from William Mata. If the SRPAB's goal is to promote sustainability, the revised ordinance wording must include the term climate change and/or greenhouse gas emissions. I also ask the city of Waco join the Sierra Club's Ready for 100 movement, a national campaign that calls for 100% renewable energy by 2050. Finally, I nominate as a board member someone who represents the only local organization, the Waco Friends of the Climate, visibly and effectively working on sustainability for our local government and community. Alan Northcutt. Mayor and Council, those are all the comments I received.
Thank you, Esmeralda. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, please poll the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Green?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Vito?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes, that motion carries. We'll turn to ordinance 2020-793 on second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas by adding Appendix C entitled Impact Fees, providing for definitions, establishing roadway impact fees within the city limits, and water and wastewater impact fees in the city and its extraterritorial jurisdiction service area, providing for assessment of said impact fees, providing for the general administration of said impact fees, providing for the accounting of the collected fees, providing for waivers of impact fees, providing for a fee refund, providing for an appeal procedure, establishing an effective date of June 1st, 2021, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed and open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 5-1 council vote on first reading on October 20th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval on second reading.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just let me jump in here. And I just want everybody to know I'm a supporter of the impact fees and as a resource, a revenue source. And I really appreciate staff's work and the consultants' work on getting us this far in the process. And I think the proposed structure has a lot of thoughtful aspects as far as phase-ins and exemptions and the like. 2 weeks ago at our last council meeting, I asked for a couple things. One of them was the clarifying the role of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee and getting a better understanding of how future councils can tweak the fees within the terms of the ordinance. And I want to express my appreciation to Clint and legal staff and and Paul for providing that very clearly. That we do have some latitude. It's maybe a little more developed than just changing another kind of fee, but there is a pathway to modifying and tweaking the fees. The other concern I had was, just having this fee structure and not having a better idea of what this fee structure would have generated in 2019 and 2020. And I've said this many times, and I don't want to belabor the vote here tonight with it, but that's one thing that kind of sticks on my mind because I still don't have an idea of scale, what this fee structure, what we can expect out of it. So I'm taking a stance of respectful opposition here. And I agree with the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee that we're ready to go on residential, but not on the commercial. That's all.
Okay, any further discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
No.
Ewing,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Speedo,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Deaver.
I didn't hear, yes, thank you.
Sorry.
That motion carries. Ordinance, I couldn't hear you call my name. Ordinance 2020-794 on second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing a comprehensive plan be amended to change the land use designation from mixed-use flex to medium-density residential office flex on property described as lots 5, 6, 7, 8A, 8B, 9, and 10, Block 101, University Heights Edition, and lots 5, 6, and 7, Block 101, Farwell Heights Edition, known as 1815, 1817, and 1827 Proctor Avenue, and 2309 through 11 North 19th Street, and 1818, 1822, and 1826 Herring Avenue. Providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zone map shall be changed, and the property described above shall be changed from C2 to R2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on October 20th, 2020.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Move approval
Motion.
on second reading.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Speedo,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries. Are there any council member reports on committees or boards or commissions liaison business? All right, seeing none, there being no further business, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:33 p.m. Everybody have a good evening.
You too.